And welcome to Western Kabuki, as always brought to you by Autism. Marcos, our guest today, told us that he would be 10 minutes late. And guess what time we're starting? 10 minutes. Marcos, how we doing? The homie himself joining us once again. Marcos, I'm talking to you first. How we doing, Marcos?
What's up? I got some stuff to talk about regarding my last episode on the pod with you guys and the exposure.
I think it's best to leave the past in the past, my brother.
No. This isn't correcting the record at all. This is more or less just like letting all of you know what like you've exposed me to now. Right? So like we'll talk about it. It's fun. It's funnier. I'll let everyone get their spiel out, but it's something we got to talk about at some point.
We'll get right the fuck into it. I gotta go to my main man, our producer himself, Alex. Alex, how are you?
I'm great, man. Starting 10 minutes on the dot from when we were supposed to is actually pretty good for us. So
hell yes.
Honestly, yeah.
Hell yes. Big W. And I'll tell you right now, my secondary man, that's Caleb. I'm looking right at him. His name is on my screen. And I will say Caleb pulled an incredible premium guest that you can listen to us. We will be recording right after we talk to Marcos about gooning. We are going to talk to an incredible guest brought to you by Caleb. Caleb, I'd love for you to announce who we'll be talking to behind the paywall.
Yeah, this will lead me into my segue that I wanted to rant about this episode first anyway. But yeah, we are going to be talking to none other than Brian Krasenstein, of the brothers Krasenstein fame. You have seen them in Donald Trump's replies. You have seen them in Elon Musk's replies. You've seen them all over the internet. Collectively, I think they have like over all their platforms, something like 5-6 million followers. They're everywhere. They're everywhere you want to be. And you've
even seen them in financial crimes. You've seen them everywhere.
Yo, we'll get to that. Hopefully don't scare them off. I have a list of questions I want to ask, and we'll see. But that
me and Caleb are gonna do a good cop, bad cop thing. I'm gonna come in and be like, "What's up, man? How's it going?" And then Caleb's gonna be like, "What happened to your first wife?"
Yeah, whack. You're like, "Oh, what's your work hours?" Like, what are you doing? This look great. And then I'm like, "Tell me about your crimes now."
Where? It's like, is Jeffrey Epstein really dead?
Yeah, you got to hear about your calves, Brian. And of course, Juniper. June, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Very excited to talk to Marcos about, as we've stated, gooning, and then also to hear about some crimes later on.
So that was my thing. We have all these. The show is growing still at an astronomical rate. We're getting all these crazy guests. We're having a lot of fun times. We're doing all this great stuff. But I can't fucking escape this gooning jack-off shit. That's all anybody wants to talk about. It's all the fucking texts and emails that we get in the mailbag. It's all about gooning. It's like when I go on other people they're like, "Oh, fucking the gooning episode." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Like, I can't really, like, I only agreed to do this episode so I could finally be released from my goon cave. This is it. We're going to do this episode. We brought Marcos back. And when I told everybody in the Discord that we were doing this today, it exploded. People were going crazy. That not only were we returning to gooning, but we're bringing Marcos back.
This is the Western Kabuki equivalent of the audience yelling, "Shut up and play the hits."
So, and we do indeed want to hold your hand while we masturbate in a goon cave together. So, Marcos, when you came on to our episode, you dropped many tidbits about yourself and your life and your past and your present. And a lot of people are concerned about your personal connection to gooning, and so we want you to expand on it.
One of the most psychotic things about me is that I was a gooner and I gooned, but I'm a normal guy. Does that make it? That's worse. Like, you know, like you expect like a tragic backstory. Well, I mean, I had a tragic backstory, but like I got over it and I'm fine now. And when I say that out loud, it makes me sound more psychotic. There's no way you can't, once you dip your toes into something that like insane, right? You can't really get out of it without ever like no, you have to believe me. I'm regular. No, I'm normal, guys.
Yeah, like when you dropped that, when we were talking about, because it was the worst tweets of the year so far episode, and you dropped that, I just like out of nowhere. I don't even remember the context, but I was like, it like flashbanged me. I was like, wait, are you kidding me? What's going on here?
I got angry DMs from Marcos being like, you guys missed the fucking point.
You guys, so you don't understand the point. Because
we don't.
Yeah,
Marcos, we do not.
There's a lot going on in like, okay, at the core, this is just, I've had like, what it is that like, I somehow managed to go so deep into like the lonely sphere is what I called it, right? Like there's an entire just a myriad of people in the world that are the loneliest fucking people you could ever imagine being. Right. And like they exist and they don't know how to properly function and they don't know how to like, and like the more that they try to escape that alienation, you want to get into like all, like into the brass tacks, it has something to do with capitalism furthering our alienation from, the society that we exist in. But I grew up in the lonely sphere, right? Like I grew up around desperately lonely people my entire life. And I got to know them up close and personal. And because of that, I was part of their interest. You know what I'm saying? And one of the many interests that I was meeting, like when I was younger, like I want to say like 15 or 16 and like understanding like my own journey. I have like, no matter what, I always have these like really strange, like the rules don't apply to me in a lot of ways sometimes. And I don't know if that's out of luck or if it's just because like I'm too dense, like my brain is too dense for like psychic damage to take hold. You know what I mean?
I think you were talking to three people who know 100% exactly what you mean when you say that, my friend.
Yeah, so growing up, when I was like 14, when I was like 11, I realized that I was like bisexual, right? And it wasn't like a realization. It was just kind of like, why can't I like girls and guys? You know what I mean? There was an innocentness to it that I don't think a lot of people have that same context for. Like I just kind of understood it about myself. And because of that, I didn't really wrestle with it, right? And when I got to like high school and like when I was like 14, 15, I was openly bisexual. And that was in the early 2000s at a time when that shit was not cool to be that way. But I was also extremely big and extremely strong and extremely violent. So anyone who ever tried to give me shit about that or like called me gay or anything like that, I would just beat the living shit out of them. So like very soon people realized Marcos is not gay. There's something, they didn't know where to put me. You know what I'm saying? They're like, this guy, he's out here
you
doing
could
gay.
Seriously have like a whole YouTube and like Twitter gimmick of like the based gay or something like that.
But yeah, like if you came up these days, yeah, that would be like an easy grift.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, but it was crazy that I was like, because like to me it wasn't even, I was just like, I don't care about who I'm like kissing or like who I'm trying to, you know what I'm saying? And what ended up happening is it put me in a fucking weird position because I was in this position where like everyone knew that I was down to clown, but people like would reach out to me to like experiment. Do you know what I'm saying?
You're the guy.
Yeah, I was the guy because they were like, oh yeah, we can mess around with this guy and then it's not gay because he's not
and
gay.
If I had to guess, they were probably like kind of like in the closet or whatever. They weren't like as upfront about it as you were. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what ended up happening, a lot of those guys ended up like they're either closeted or they're closeted and married or they like are out and gay and about. But like what ended up happening was like that kind of put me in this weird cycle where I would meet people under those circumstances all the time. Right. And when you meet enough people in those circumstances, the gooning thing just kind of fucking goes hand in hand with that.
Well, yeah, because you're centering like sexuality into every interaction at that point where it's like.
Yeah. And so I would get invites to like, I would have friends come over or I would have friends ask me to, like, no one ever came over to my house. My house was the crack house. So like no one would come over. You know what I mean? Like my house was literally like a halfway house. Like my dad had turned the halfway house that he came from into like a halfway house. So like if you got kicked, I don't know. There's a lot of lore. There's a lot of lore to my life. But what ended up happening was my dad was on drugs most of like growing up and in recovery. And when he was on his recovery journey, he would meet people that were like fucking up bad and he would just bring them home. Right. So like I grew up around a lot of fucked up people, like just, people like just trying to they weren't complete pieces of shit, but they weren't fucking like, they weren't like squeaky clean. And they were in this between state where they were trying to figure out themselves. So that's like another key component to like, these circles, right? These circles of hyper loneliness. And like the dudes that I was meeting, like when I was like, the guy like in high school and then like late high school when I got out and I was going to community college and stuff, I would get invited all the time to like, hey, do you want to come through to hang out at my house? And it was, I initially just thought it was like a kickback between me and 3 other guys, and we hang out and we'd be watching TV. And then one of the guys would be like, you guys want to watch porn? And then that, you know what I'm saying? And it would start off innocently enough where they would do shit like that and then beat their meat all the goddamn time. And then it became a meetup. Like that was the thing that they did. None of these guys were gay. They didn't like, I was the only one there that was, right? That I was like, so, right. And like, it eventually evolved into like, more stuff, but none of these guys were like, yeah, like we're having gay sex, but there's nothing gay about it. Right. Like it was a very, yeah, but literally, yeah, they were, because like, well, there's girl porn. There's like girls and guys banging on like straight porn on the TV. So it's not gay that I'm blowing you. Right.
Yeah.
And like, do you know what I'm saying? Like
rock
it's very,
solid.
yeah. So, but in those circles, right? Like you hang out enough, you meet enough people in those like circles, you eventually find, I don't know, like you just find yourself traveling in these circles. And I would meet people like that all the time. And there's like 3 ways that you can really get into gooning. And one of them is that like you're extremely fucking lonely and you have no idea how to talk to people. And so like the only thing that makes you feel human is like sexual. You know what I'm saying? And like you are so desensitized for whatever reason, like sexually desensitized, that the only thing that can get you off is yourself. So like there's like a feeling of the only thing that's going to get me off is me. But if there's another person there with me, then it's not as weird. You know what I'm saying? There's like
so I knew a guy, he was my best friend's sister's boyfriend when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And he was like an older guy. He was like, he had done like a 5 and dive in the Marines. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of fucked up in the head after being in Iraq. Mm-hmm. And we were like hanging out, and again, he's like 28, I'm like 19 or so. And he says to me and my like younger brothers, like, if you think about it, it's like gayer to watch porn, or no, it's gayer to have sex with a woman because like she's had a bunch of dicks or whatever. It's like pretty straight to just like jack off to porn, even if it's like gay porn or whatever. And we're like, oh, cool, man.
Yeah, there's a definite like aspect where your brain is just fucked up and that's just normal to you. You know what I'm saying? And like and those are the people that I would meet, and then there's the sadder people that I would meet. And like this is because like I talk about this on my own podcast all the time, where like I've always been in this weird position where like I've always been around heavy drug users and I'm too afraid to use drugs because I saw what it did to like my dad and stuff. But I'll use like weird drugs. Like I loved fucking what is that? Because I like deliriants. Right? Like I'll take like 40 Benadryl, and like everyone is like, smoking meth and shit. And I'm like, I'll have like 40 Benadryl, guys. You know what I mean?
You're going
like,
crazy with the Benny.
Did you do robo tripping?
Yeah. Oh my God. I had something I used to call night juice. Right?
Night juice.
What is that? Please
What
explain.
is night juice? I'd like to hear what night juice is.
Night juice is gin and grape Dimetap.
Let's fucking go.
Wow.
My night juice is what I called it. And I used to drink. And like, because what happens is like you go to sleep, but you're awake. I don't know. like you're awake, you're fully functioning, and you can do things. I had a whole job when I was like fucked up on night juice. I used to, I was a pizza delivery driver I was fucking fucked up on night juice. Yeah, I never got in an accident or anything, but I definitely should not have been doing that.
Spoilers for the Ivan Reitman film Tully. but that literally happens in the film Tully. She
Yes.
she thinks she has hired a nanny for her child, but she is working a day job and then staying up all night with her sleepless infant, and thinks she has hired a nanny because she is so delirious on like sleeping pills and insomnia.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's my life growing up. I've just kind of always been exposed to some kind of background madness, right? Like mental illness is like this thing that exists in my family. Like in a Mexican family, you don't have mentally ill. You're just crazy, fool. Like that's it, right? Like you're not my uncle. There's a little fun story that I tell people. My great uncle died in Mexico. He was a strong man. He was like a big, massive guy in like the 1800s, right? Like a fucking massive ass dude. At the time in like Mexico, most people were like 5'5", 5'4", you know, like still kind of the same. He was like 6'3".
You're talking about 2005.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's like 6'3". He was like 6'3" and like 230 pounds, and he used to have a sideshow where he would lift up stuff. And he like his coup de grace, like how he would end every show is he would knock out a cow. He would go and he was that strong. He would punch a fucking cow in the forehead and knock it out.
Oh, that's so cool. We need that today.
I don't know everyone's like, oh, it's not a cow's skull. You need like it's an insane amount of PSI to just like,
so you break your fucking hand before you knock it out, you'd think.
Yeah, well,
if you are not strong enough to lift an average sledgehammer, you cannot break a cow's skull with a sledgehammer.
Yeah,
I'll tell you.
Yeah, it was so like not this is the 1800s, a different time, but that was his like how he would show people that that was his like feats of strength. But he was a schizophrenic, like like everyone in the town that he was in was afraid of him. Right? Like that was more, they paid him to just put on his sideshow more than they actually, you know what I'm saying? Like were like his feats
it was like
strength.
welfare.
Yeah, it was because his feats of strength were like impressive and all that, but they were terrified of him because he would go town to town and beat the absolute dog shit out of any preacher or priest that he saw.
Oh, they were paying like protection money, like
like a racket, but from him, right? But he would throw a little party before he. I don't know how to explain it, but he gathered.
That's crazy.
One day he gathered everyone in the town, like in a town together, that had and he got on some train tracks, and he said, "I'm gonna fucking punch this train off the track."
No,
and he died. He killed himself. That's how he died.
Holy fuck,
my
dude.
God,
that's something that happened in Mexico, and like that's a family. I don't know the validity of it, but that's the story. But there's pictures of my Tío Augie, and he's fucking huge. And like my Tío Felipe, in like now, he's passed away now, but the town where he grew up in Tulare, people were terrified of him because for the similar reasons. He was a big giant guy. And he would show up to parties that he would just see parties on the street. He would walk in there and he would walk up to random people and he would just go like, "It's about that time." And people would be like, "What the fuck are you talking?" Like, who is this guy? And then he would just like go and he party and do whatever. And then he would walk up to people, like the people that he said it's about that time, and he would just beat the shit out of them. And then people like, when he'd calm down, people were like, "What the fuck is wrong? Like, what are you doing?" And he would be like, "I told him what time it was." Right, so like he was just a fucking crazy person. And so like my whole dad's side of the family is very much, they're crazy people. My mom's side of the family is also crazy people, but like because of that I grew up in this weird nexus of psychotically.
What I think is like really important from what you're saying there is not the story itself about villages of people paying protection money to your Paul Bunyan uncle. But I'm like curious, like how was that story told in your family?
They tell that story like pride, like, "Oh, your Tío Augie was so cool." right? And like my
So that's
and, like,
the thing. You're telling us, like, in an ambivalent, like, this guy was known for his violence and danger.
Yeah, he's a
but your
psychopath.
family for most of your life has told you this guy could fuck anybody up. He was so cool.
Yeah, my
And to be
uncle.
honest, he sounds pretty awesome. I can't lie. He's that story. I really like your great uncle. I'm a big fan.
My Theo Felipe was the same, right? The same way, like just a massive giant dude that would beat the absolute shit out of anybody, and the whole town was afraid of him. But you ask anyone in my family, and they're like, "Yeah, he was a cool guy because he fixed bikes." I'm like, no, he was a fucking psychopath, dude. What are you talking about, right? Like, I have the clarity of mind to be able to understand that, yeah, he might have been a nice guy who would fix your bike, but he also would beat you within an inch of your life because God told him to do that. He used to do that all the time. He used to walk.
This is how Mexicans and Italians can find common ground. He's not criminally violent. That's just Uncle Tony. That's just what he does.
It's
how he
divine
gets down,
intervention.
yeah. It's just how he gets
They
down.
talk to God. Yeah.
No, my dad used to literally be like, "No, this is how he gets down, fool. Like, it's not even like that." I'm like, "What do you mean, dude? Like, what are you talking about? That's how he gets down. What are you talking about?" Yeah. So like, I don't, that kind of like family history though. Like, growing up, I don't know how the fuck I ended up where I had the clarity of mind to like understand that everything that was when I was growing up, everything that was kind of fucked up and weird was like not normal, but also like I couldn't let it affect me. You know what I'm saying? And so like,
Yeah, can I put something to you about like how that came to be?
Yeah.
Like, because I want to know what you think, because I think there's a level of fucked up I could have been that I'm not as well. And I attribute it to the internet. I think a lot of people really hate on, online culture and the internet. But I mean, just being able to see that not everybody lives the kind of life I do as a kid or experiences the same thing I do is like really edifying to like talk to somebody who has lived a similar experience and been like, no, what you're living through is bad.
I didn't have like steady access to the internet till I was like 17.
Oh, shit, really?
Yeah, like I didn't even know what the internet was until like literally 17, like when I met my first girlfriend because she had internet. And like cuz my grandma
I
had
don't
a
know how
computer.
old you are. What year
I'm
was
33. So like
so
1990.
I'm 36 and I was on the internet by the age of like 11 for context.
shit.
Oh, so that's pretty late. Yeah, for you, Marcos. Yeah.
Extremely late, right? So like what I attribute it to is that like, and I tell this story, I've told this story like maybe 1,000 times on my podcast, but I tell it on almost every podcast I end up on. What I attribute it to was when I was 14. No. When I was 12, I am the size that I am now. I'm like 5'5". I'm short, but I'm big. Like I'm a big, solid guy. And I was the size that I was now that I am then. So like when I was like 11, I just had a growth spurt at 5'5", and I started getting fucking massive and strong. And I was like, yeah. And like that kind of size on a child that was like made fun of, you know what I'm saying? You eventually become a bully. And so like by the time I was 12 years old, I was a fucking absolute menace. And I was in the 6th grade and I was like beating the absolute fucking shit out of everyone and anything that I could, you know what I'm saying? Like I was just a violent animal. Like I was literally like, I had been in like 13, 14 fights before the end of the first, I think 3 months of school.
You were just following your heritage.
Well, no, I was,
like.
I was like, I grew up, I had like a really violent home. Like my dad on drugs and my mom, was just fucking kind of not there. Like, so I was the example. I was taking the rage that I was feeling at home and I was just pouring it out. You know what I'm saying? Like to anyone that could. And what changed me and fucking fixed me was when I was 13 years old, I got the absolute dog shit beat out of me by pretty much the entire school. Right? Like I was in middle school and what happened was I beat this kid up named John. I think his name was John Duarte. And I beat
John.
Yeah. You know him? No. Well, I beat him up. I beat him up real bad. And he had 2 older brothers. One was like 21 and the other one was like 19. And like one day I'm walking like home. School just let out, the bell just rang. And his brothers come out of the car and start kicking my ass. They start beating the shit out of me, and they won. They're a big ass adults, and then like instead of the school administrators, and like this is like in the 2000s, so like the school back then was way less safe than it is now. You know what I'm saying? Like it used to be hockey rules. We're like, yeah, let them fight for a little bit, and then when they're tired,
Yeah, they didn't even adopt. Do you remember that like anti-bullying campaign that started happening in like the early 2010s? I think it was.
Yeah,
you didn't even have that yet.
Yeah, that wasn't even. No, it was literally hockey rules where I went to school, right? Like it was like you let them fight for like 20 minutes, and then you come in and swoop them up. You know what I mean? Like let them get tired. Let there be a winner first, and then you know what I'm saying?
That
like,
I want to say as a teacher in 2023, that is not the policy now.
But life finds a way.
Probably for the best.
Life finds a way. It does.
Yeah.
So I was getting my ass beat, and then random kids from the fucking like who were getting out started like
fuck you, Marcos. Let's get him.
They started kicking me and beating, and like pretty much the entire school beat my ass. Like I'm not even joking about that. Like I ended up just doing like fucking 2 weeks in the hospital because I got beat up that bad by an entire.
Lord, dude.
No, don't feel bad for me. I deserve that shit. I deserve worse, right?
See, but the thing is, we're talking to you, and we're not talking to them.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We're on your side here.
But Juniper, you got to think about it this way. They unionized against him. That was
they
a
did.
collective bargaining action.
Okay. So okay, you're right. That's
some
the
other
leftist
asshole
position.
is on a podcast tonight telling that story. Like you beat the dog shit out of that guy.
This kid. Yeah. So what ended up happening was when I came back to school, I'm all they broke my fucking wrist, they broke my knee, I was fucked up, and I came back to school, and first off I got charged for that. I got charged with assault, even though I was whatever. Anyways, I like
even though you lost the fight, you instigated it, but you also lost, and then you got charged.
I still got charged with that. Anyways, I go back to school, and people are throwing ketchup packets at me. And I'm in a wheelchair.
Oh my God,
people
dude.
they're throwing water bottles at me. They're fucking spitting in my lunch. They were slapping me because I couldn't do anything about it. And they did that shit to me for 4 months until finally the administrators called my mom, and they were like, "Hey, we're expelling your son," and because like it's a risk. Like the entire school is just fucking.
I've seen it done. Like a wellness expulsion. Like give them a year, let them come back.
Go somewhere. So they sent me to a different school, and I mean word travels. Like people knew, and I went to that school, and people were fucking with me there, and that kind of perspective of that there's always someone bigger, there's always someone stronger, changed honestly, I'm grateful for it because it changed the trajectory of my life. It made me it made me realize that all the violence and shit that I was subjected to at home was not me. It wasn't my fault. You know what I'm saying? I didn't do anything about it. Like I was just in it. Right. And I don't know. I honestly, I feel fucking like very grateful that I was in that position and that I had the mental capacity to not take all that pain that I was feeling when I was, being, like getting, like trying to recover, and people were fucking me up. Instead of taking that pain and letting it sour me, it kind of changed. I have to be better. You know what I'm saying? And like, honestly, that's anyway, how that all fucking ties into like my life and like the
gooning.
Like just the lonely stuff. It's goon.
Yeah.
Because it's gooning is a symptom of loneliness. In all honesty, like
and I think that like what we said even last episode when you brought it up is that you are literally the most normal gooner. Like you are. It only gets worse with other gooners from here.
So what it is addiction, right?
Uh-huh.
It all comes from addiction. And all addiction really comes from is like alienation and loneliness, right? It's this feeling that like for a lot of people, I get shit for this all the time, but I grew up around it. Like people would tell me all the time, like, well, I have a disease and that disease is addiction. And like, I would be like, the way you make it sound like a disease, it sounds like it's one of these things that you're never going to recover from. And like, that's not true. To me, it's always been a learning disability, right? It's the inability to see that my consequences have actions and they're only getting worse and I'm responsible for them. And not being able to make those jumps, you know what I'm saying? Like that's a learning disability. Literally, that's when you're incapable of stretching your logic or your brain to like understand the consequences of an action, there's either psychosis, which is a different thing, or that's a fucking learning disability. And like, to me, addiction stems from loneliness, and loneliness after a specific amount of time, like by yourself, like in your own head, on like not feeling like you have anyone to reach out to, that becomes a learning disability. You are unable to, especially like after a long enough time, you're unable to like relate to people in a normal way, or in a way that's like socially acceptable. You know what I'm saying?
I want to say here that, like, to all of our 12-step cells, I'm sorry, but like what he is saying is actually like proven by like medicine and things.
Damn, I just stumbled ass backwards.
No, you're correct. It's not that you are. It's not to say that you are correct. It's to say that there is data to support what you are saying. And so, to the 12-step cells who are like once an addict, always an addict, like even Bill W had some flexibility around that, and you should be really open to it.
My dad was a hardcore like meth head, like one of the literally just sold everything I owned. Fucking meth head. He's been sober now for I think 10 years, right?
Oh hell yeah.
He's 55. He's too fucking old to be average. You know what I'm saying? Like he's an old. There's no such thing as old ass addicts, and the reason is either they kill themselves from their loneliness, from their addiction, or they realize how fucking dumb they look. You know what I'm saying? That they make that final connection that like, fuck, this is killing me, this is bad, and then like, oh fuck, you know what I'm saying? And like all of the other problems, right? When you become addicted, when you become an addict, when you start having these issues, they compound and they make other parts of your life much harder to fucking get through.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? And like,
yeah.
So I grew up like in a house full of addicts, right? Like, different addictions, methamphetamine, heroin, fucking crack cocaine, fucking ecstasy, whatever. Like my dad ran this little fucking weird halfway house thing, and I just happened to grow up in it. And like seeing all that stuff, you meet the loneliest people you've ever met in your life, like in a position and in a time in their lives when they're probably the most alienated they've ever been. And like running in those circles, like developing sexually in those circles, you tend to find yourself in weird extremes, and like that's where I found myself growing up. Like, it touched everything that I lived in my life. It touched like my dad and my mom's like problems touched every single thing in my life. But instead of me fucking ruining my life for that, I like lucked out. I feel like I lucked out, and I just had the perspective to be like, yeah, that's them, and I'm different. I'm a different person, And like,
I want to just like say here, Marcos, because I'm a person who hasn't really experienced a lot of like personal loneliness in the way you're describing in my life, but I have done some, and I think that loneliness is a thing that even people who don't feel it often fear a lot. And I think it's something to really like just sort of stop, and if you're not going to give yourself some credit, Marcos, to just sort of recognize that that's a big thing to overcome. I mean, that's not that, like, what you're describing is not something that can be easily accomplished.
It sounds okay. It sounds cool. It sounds like I got my life together. You know what I mean? But I'm happy out of spite, right? Like I'm normal and regular out of spite. You're happy, bro. Yeah, but out of spite though. You know what I'm saying? Because motherfuckers want me miserable. So fuck you. You know what I mean? Like,
sometimes, I mean, honestly, sometimes it just has to be like that though. Yeah. Sometimes that's what it takes to get better and like find yourself in a better spot in your life.
Yeah, that's literally what it is. Like I'm fueled by like a rage that most people will never understand. We're like, I will be happy. Oh, you want me to have a great day? I will. You know what I mean? Like that's
what it makes me think of is in Game of Thrones, the wolf, when he's walking around with Arya Stark, and she says to him, "If you don't love anything, then what keeps you going every day?" And he says, "Hate."
It's not. I don't hate.
Yeah, man. I kind of see what you're saying, man.
It's not even hate. It's just like it's just kind of what I've come to understand, right? Is that like systemically, my mom and my dad didn't come from a good household and background, right? In a lot of ways, they became victims of a society that wanted them in the place that they were in, right? Like, and I was on a similar trajectory along with my brothers and sisters. We were all on on a similar trajectory. And I recognized that when I was like fucking 17, that this was the way that the way the shit was going, that I was going to either be a statistic, you know what I mean? Or like I had the trajectory of like being an angry, violent person in and out of jail the rest of my fucking life, or I could be better. And not better because like I knew I could be better, but better because I refuse to let society win. I refuse to let everything that society has dictated for me by the circumstances of my birth, by the color of my skin, by where I was born, by how I was born, by who raised me. I refuse to let those motherfuckers win. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm better
And you
than
clearly
that. I
and you
can be
clearly
better
read
than that. And
you
it's-
read a
It's
little
that
bit
hate.
of
it's that love of hate.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
yeah.
It's not. I call it hate.
Maybe
It
not
doesn't
hate,
feel
but
like
it's
hate.
more
It's
spite.
rage.
But it
It's
sounds
yeah.
like
Yeah.
to me it sounds like you've also read a little bit of Frederick Douglass that helped you through that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to.
You talk to a teacher about an academic text, my big man.
My
He's gonna mark you up.
no, my
Be careful.
so my half brother is my half brother Miles, half black dude, and I spent a lot of time in EPA in the 90s, which is a very East Palo Alto in the 90s was a fucking dangerous ass place to be. But I spent a lot of time with his mom, and growing up, she was such a nice person and hopeful. And I remember three things that she always gave me. She lived in like fucking one of the worst like neighborhoods in one of the worst areas in that time. Like I think it was East Palo Alto is one of the only places in America that like had the full double digit murder rate, which has never happened in any other city.
Shit.
Right? Where it's like I think it's like one in every. The way that the double digit rate works is that like for every 100 citizens, if one dies, it counts as like one, right? And like at that time in the 90s, it was at 90s or it was at 33 or something like that. So that for every 33 citizen, for every 100 citizens, 33 of them were involved in a violent crime, right? Like
Jesus.
she lived in that, right? That was like her lot in life. She wasn't gonna. And the thing I remember one time being very upset with my dad and my mom, and I was, I'm with this lady that's not my mom, right? That's like my dad's baby mama. Like, I'm aware that this situation is fucked up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like pissed off about it. I'm mad at my dad and I'm mad at everything. And she read, I think it was Langston Hughes. I never saw a wild bird feel sorry for itself. It can drop dead, like frozen on a cold winter's day, and at no point in its life would it ever feel sorry for itself. And I remember that line. I remember it so, like, I remember her saying it to me because I was so angry at my dad and I was fucking like having a meltdown. I think I was like 13 or 14, and she said that shit to me, and it, you know what I'm saying? Like it opened my eyes of like, I can't feel bad for myself. Right?
So
Like
do you believe in God?
I believe in the homies. I believe in Babalusa and the homies.
Because that sounds like, that sounds religious.
I don't know if it's religious. I don't have like a really religiosity. I believe that I have the opportunity, no matter what, I always have the opportunity to make things better. You know what I'm saying? And like, whether or not that's like that's a religiosity or like a religious belief, contrary even to like the facts, I still refuse to like deal with reality and be like, no, I can be better. I can do that. I got this. But you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of shit is, I don't know. She made me read The Souls of Black Folk when I was growing up, which is one of my fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Her hand in raising me, like she's just some random lady that my dad banged, but she means so much to me. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And like,
yeah.
and like, I don't know how to like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't know how to like, I don't have a normal family life. And I mean, like, because I didn't have this normal family life, because I didn't have any of this sense of normalcy that a lot of people did, you know, when I was coming up, that's how I found myself in all these weird niche, like, you know, fucking experiences like gooning, right? Like,
Yeah. So I guess something I'm curious about is like when we did our original gooning episode, we kind of briefly touched on I think it was called the gooning rehab. It was like people trying to get away from gooning. And I was kind of curious, like, what was that moment for you where you were like, oh, this needs to like stop?
what
like
happened
you
was
needed to
all
go
the
to rehab.
people around me stopped, and I was like, oh, I guess we're not having fun no more. Right?
Okay.
Like,
Was it just like they grew out of it, or like?
well, no, because they had porn addictions, and I was just addicted to sucking dick and fucking. You know what I'm saying? Like they all were like hard. That's the thing about porn addiction too. Like porn is very strange to me. I've never understood it. And like I get it. Like you know you see hot things and you beat your meat to it, I guess. But like the aspect of desire that people end up putting into it when they watch too much of it, it changes them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
It's a really dark thing too, because you don't even really have to be a gooner to get that level
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like
that kind of
Yeah, like porn
that
addiction is like
it's-
a real thing
Yeah,
for
it's
a lot of people.
really
yeah.
dark. It's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
dark.
Listen, I love big oily butt cheeks as much as the next person, but I'm not like looking at like I'm not in this like, you know, selling my house to fucking you know what I mean, to continue my fucking
And if you've got perfectly unoiled normal butt cheeks in your face at the moment, you're not going to be like, this sucks. I need
Yeah.
some oily ones on a screen.
yeah, that's that derealization, right? Like that's what it is.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
further, it's alienation. It's further alienation.
Yes.
It's another symptom of loneliness. That's why like this is why I was talking about addiction and all this other, why we went on this stupid tangent, because it all kind of comes back around. But like my experience with gooning was not the normal experience. I saw it as like a fucking sport. Right? Like I was like, oh, you know what I'm saying?
Oh
Like,
my fucking god, bro, that's crazy.
yeah, this is what I mean by like I'm psychotic. Everyone else around me, they were actual psychopaths, but they, you know, they're sympathetic. I do have no sympathy for me.
So these were the people that had the 10 screens up on the wall. They had the 10 posters on the wall. You just kind of showed up at these spots.
Yeah.
You didn't really have the posters on your walls.
No, and I would come
No.
home and just be like, oh yeah, I just fucking spent 10 hours fucking jerking off at some guy's house. I feel good. You know, may go for a run or something. Right? like it's, I don't know how to fucking explain it, but I'm also very good at compartmentalizing too. Right. So that's probably another aspect to it. But like,
Marcos, how sure are you that there were very bad things that happened to you that you don't remember?
oh, absolutely positive.
I'm
wanna
at like 70. I'm at like 70.
I don't want to get too sad about it, but like I found out.
Don't get too sad.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll talk about this off a podcast. We'll talk about this IRL.
Not tonight, bro, because we gotta check
we
out here in a hot minute.
Okay. Yeah. My bad.
No, you're all
No,
good,
you're
bro.
not your bad. I'm just letting you know.
Okay. Gooning. What I wanted to get about with gooning is like what I really wanted to get at it is that it's a symptom of loneliness, and a lot of lonely people are finding themselves in an extreme cycle of addiction. Right. And that's what gooning is. It's an extreme cycle of addiction for them. For me, I was more or less like, I think at the time I was dealing with a hardcore like sex addiction. Right. And like, you know, I was like 19 to like 22. I was like fucking on Craigslist every day. Do you know what I'm saying? Like looking for something to do or someone. Right. Like, and that's how I found myself traveling in these circles. And for them, it was about this alienation, this like I'm on the outside, or it was about drugs. They were like, I'm partying. They called it partying with Tina, which, you know, crystal meth. They would be like, I'm partying with Tina, who wants to come by? And I would just, you know, my own danger, like at the time I was 19, I was invincible. I didn't give a fuck about like anything. I'd be like, yeah, I'll go to this guy at the stranger's house in Los Gatos. This is fucking no, you know, he lives on a compound. That's not weird. Do you know what I mean? Like, but also like I was sure of myself. Like if anything happens, I'll beat the fuck out of him or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, and in all that time, lots of weird things happen to me, but nothing in a very dangerous way. And I think that's, well, one, it's because I'm a man, and two, that I'm very lucky for all these experiences. But like a lot of the gooners that I met, they were just very sad, very alienated people that don't know how to them, the only human thing that they know how to do at this point is like get off with someone else. And that's human to them.
Like that was the only way they could relate to a person, sort of.
Yeah, like that was like,
Yeah.
this is what normal people do. Do you know what I'm
This
saying?
is like how they make a friend,
Yeah.
or not even a friend necessarily, just how they find connection in this lonely
Yeah,
world.
often, a lot of times I would go like to a session, right? Like that's, like I would go and
We get what you mean.
yeah. I would go and we would, do the thing for like hours and hours and hours, not talk, have no conversation, and then it would be done. And then they'd look at me like, you want a Gatorade or something, like a sandwich? And we would just hang out and watch TV or like talk about play video
Jesus
games. Because these
fucking
people,
Christ,
these
bro.
people were just lonely. And at the time I was lonely. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanted to get to know them. There was almost nothing sexual about it, if that makes any sense. Like
It makes a lot of sense. It makes an uncomfortable amount of sense, I think.
yeah, this was just kind of like, okay, you want to go beat your meat with me for like the next couple hours. All right. Well, I see you're normal and you want to hang out now. Like, you know what I mean? Like there was a very strange aspect.
Now
to
that you've sucked the whole team off, we
yeah,
can kind
hey,
of.
if you guys don't want to go watch a movie or something, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's because there's like I don't really know how to explain it, but like for them, they were incredibly lonely. I was also incredibly lonely, but for them, the act of like the act of gooning, the act of like getting together with their friends, or even just being like, you would not believe how many times some people would just fall away from it. They would fall away from it and we wouldn't hear from them because I used to do like, by the way, if you go to like sex addict stuff, you're just going there to fuck. That's literally what I was doing. I was just picking up anyone in the parking lot. I was like, hey, you want a BJ or something? Like just like I did not go there for recovery. I don't know a single person who did, but that's kind of like how you would meet people, and people would just disappear. You wouldn't see them for long periods of time, and you would figure, oh, they got better, or they found themselves in a relationship or something, right? But no, they were gooning like by solo, and those people either never came back, or when they came back, they were worse. They were fucked up.
Jesus. So here's what I want to say. That's going to be the final word in this episode. Thank you so much, Marcos.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story. Yeah.
We're going to get to all that real quick. If you were really like, oh man, Western Kabuki did such a bad job with VTubers, they did not go into enough detail. I want you to consider what it means to go into enough detail after listening to all of this.
Yeah. My apologies for all the psychic damage.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We know what was going to happen. I'm talking to the listener because they keep on saying like, oh, we love the Sneeko episode. We love the Gooning episode. We love the VTuber episode, but you could have done XYZ. And it's like, okay, maybe, but here's the follow-up to the Gooning episode. So y'all decide if you want to find out what happened to the various VTubers to make them like that. I want you to really think a long and hard amount of time about it, because I'm sure Guargura or Iron Mouse or any of these people would love to talk to us, but also, what do you want to know about those people, guys?
No, I'm glad we did this like a deeper dive into gooning. No, it illuminated a lot. I mean, I think it makes sense that it kind of stems a lot from loneliness, but it seems like that's like the primary main thing going on here. Yeah, especially like group gooning.
It's a loneliness that comes with like addiction. There's an addiction aspect to it where like you're stuck in a cycle of doing it. Because my addiction was a sex addiction, and it wasn't necessarily that kind of addiction. Like having another person there was kind of the necessary part. So do you know what I'm saying? So like I wasn't doing what they were doing. In fact, to me it was weird when they would go solo. But when they would go solo, those guys would fucking disappear. Like they would just fall off the map. You wouldn't hear from them. They would just, it was like they were, it was like they were dead. It's crazy. And if they ever came back, they came back like Chris Chan levels of weird, like just unable to function, basically unable to even hold conversations, just not on Earth anymore. Space cases. It was weird. It was very strange. I got a burrito with one guy that I hadn't seen in like a year and a half, and he was like, "My cat died," and he just said that out of the fucking blue. You know what I'm saying? We're like, "How you been, man?" And he didn't say shit for like 20 minutes, and then he's like, "My cat died." And I was like, "This has been great, dude." I guess
That person has been to the dark side of the Goon and back.
And that's an
Great
episode
episode title
title, and I think that's an episode of Western Kabuki. Thank you so much, Marcos. You can follow us at Ainter Show for Marcos, at A Goldman for Alex, at Bird Respecter for Caleb, and at JUNLPER for Juniper, at Whack Nicholson, Silent H and Whack for me. Thank you so much. We love you. Goodbye.